speaker, chosen by our graduating class, is Professor Daniel Medwed. Professor Medwed is a leading authority on criminal law and focuses his research and pro bono activities around the topic of wrongful convictions. His new book, Barred, Why the Innocent Can't Get Out of Prison, explores the range of procedural barriers that so often prevent innocent prisoners from obtaining exoneration. He is also the author of, or co-author of several criminal law casebooks, as well as Prosecution Complex, America's Race to Convict and Its Impact on the Innocent. Professor Medwed is a founding member of the Innocence Network and a former president of the Board of Directors of the Rocky Mountain Innocence Center. He currently serves on the board of the New England Innocence Project. Many of you find his name and voice familiar. Professor Medwed is the legal analyst for GBH News, Boston's local NPR and PBS affiliate. Above all, Professor Medwed is one of our most respected teachers and legal advocates. His enthusiasm for law and his advocacy for defending those who too often suffer at the hands of an unjust system is an inspiration to us at Northeastern and well beyond. I invite Professor Medwed to the podium.
Class of 2023, you've overcome quite a lot to be here, right? You had a global pandemic, an attempted insurrection of our friggin' federal government, and a barrister's ball at the aquarium? Seems very fishy to me. Ooh. And now you have to worry about what your outrageous and mildly unhinged faculty speaker might say. Will he bash, unprovoked, an unnamed law school that lurks over on Commonwealth Avenue? Your concerns are legitimate, because on a day when we're here to celebrate your successes, laud your achievements, I'm going to talk about failure. I want you guys to fail, often and spectacularly. I'm sorry, that's the only F-bomb I'm going to drop, failure, okay? I promise, maybe not, I don't know, right? And the reason for that is every single failure, and I've had many, many, many of them, as those of you who've had me in class can attest to, has made me a better lawyer and a better advocate. And by developing that scar tissue and that resilience, you will be a much better attorney, which is the goal, okay? So 2 brief war stories, even though I hate to tell war stories, right? Thank you, Jay, for laughing. When I was a young public defender, my first case, I was handling an appeal of a woman who was convicted of first-degree assault for causing serious physical injury against a friend. Now, what she had done, allegedly, was take a beer bottle, crack it open, and lash out at her friend. And yes, it caused a laceration, and yes, it was on the friend's neck, and yes, it necessitated 37 stitches. But you know what? In my zest and naivete, I was convinced that this was a grievous injustice. That was not serious physical injury. Didn't even hit the jugular. I mean, vital organs. No, that's a superficial wound. So I wrote a strident, impassioned brief about how the judge had royally messed up. And I strode into court, my very first argument, with a fancy little suit and one of my little ties. And I walked up there full of hubris, and I said, "May it please the court, Daniel Medwed on behalf," and before I could finish my introduction, the presiding judge interrupted me in a deep baritone. You know how I like to make voices, I'll try it. "Counselor, some cases should not be argued, and this is one of them." I ran, no. I somehow survived that moment, and when I got back to my apartment, I was livid. I was irate. How could he do this to me? Then I realized he was right. Not about the fact that my client didn't deserve an argument. Everyone deserves their day in court. You all know that. But he was right that I was completely off base. Not every case deserves a full-throated roar. Not every case cries out for righteous indignation. If I had pitched that case as an issue of the jury being deprived of the chance to consider alternatives, lesser alternatives to first-degree assault, I might have won. So I learned a really important lesson, right? But at least I could take comfort in the fact that a factually innocent person's imprisonment was not prolonged because of my misstep. That would come a few years later. As some of you know, after becoming a public defender, I spent 4 years running the day-to-day operations of an innocence project at Brooklyn Law School, where my students and I would investigate and litigate claims of innocence. I was the junior person on the team, get used to this, guys, which means I did all the work and got none of the credit, okay? My senior, fancy, tenured colleague got to argue the cases in court. I had to find the good cases for him. So what I would do is I would spend hours and hours and hours reviewing the hundreds of letters that I received each year to figure out if I could separate the wheat from the chaff. Could I figure out which cases were good ones to investigate? And I spent years worried about the idea that I might have missed something. And I could take comfort in the legal fiction that I hadn't, because I had not received the actual confirmation that I had done this. Until a few months ago. So I'm teaching class at Northeastern. It's the fall of 2022. I'd like to bring exonerees into my class to talk about their experiences. I'd always wanted to bring, at least for the last 5 years, a man named Felipe Rodriguez into class. Mr. Rodriguez had been wrongfully convicted of a brutal rape murder in Queens in the 80s, and he spent 30 years behind bars before a friend of mine, a great advocate named Nina Morrison, who some of you may know as Judge Morrison now of the Eastern District of New York, freed him in 2019 after she found evidence pointing to the true perpetrator. So I reached out to Mr. Rodriguez through Instagram. I'm all about the social media, right, guys? And I said, Mr. Rodriguez, will you come to my class? And this is what he wrote back. Dear Professor Medwed, this is not our first encounter. And he sent me a screenshot of a letter from 2002 that I had sent to his sister, refusing to take on his case. Regrettably, I am not in a position to be of assistance. 17 years before another, better lawyer freed him. So in that moment, because I'm a white dude, I felt defensive, and I was about to act in a defensive fashion. But I'm old, I have gray hair, so I knew enough to take a beat and to write back the only thing that rang true and seemed right. Dear Mr. Rodriguez, I'm sorry, I screwed up. Want to come to my class? We've become Insta friends and Instagram friends ever since, right? The takeaway from this, of course, is I wish you many, many successes in the road ahead, but I also wish you a lot of failures. You should fail, and you should fail miserably, because that will make you stronger, it will make you wiser, and ultimately, that will make you a better lawyer. Best of luck, class. Thank you.